These are notes 11.6, covering the Spanish-American War. Now, although this war was between America and Spain, it was never fought on either one of our soils, not in America and not in Spain. Instead, it was fought in the colonies or territories of these countries. So, um, good example here, showing some of the places that were either fought or won from the Spanish-American War. This map right here showing what was taken in the Caribbean Sea, and over here showing what was taken in the Pacific Sea. Some of the key terms from this unit, we have the Yellow Press, Jingoism, Emilio Aguinaldo, Rough Riders, and Treaty of Paris. Now, overall, we can look at the cause of the Spanish-American War. In the very beginning, we have the Cubans that rebelled against the Spanish that won not only our sympathy, but our overall opinion that they needed help. On top of that, we had the Yellow Press, which caused a lot of public opinion to change, not only for Cuba, but also for Spain. And then we have the explosion of the USS Maine that was in the harbor of Havana. In the Spanish-American War, we have the defeat of the Spanish fleet. We have the Filipino nationalists that defeat the Spanish army. We have our win in Cuba in 1898, very short, few months there, and then we occupy Puerto Rico. Some of the effects of the Spanish-American War is that we acquired the Philippines, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam. Some of the problems that it grew from this was basically what we should do about imperialism and or these colonies, and it expanded our overall empire. So Cuba wanted to gain independence from Spain. During this time period, it was ran by a military general, which was um, in charge of Cuba overall. Well, there were some Cuban rebels that had overtaken areas of um, Cuba, and in order to um, keep control of Cuba, the Spanish general had put them into concentration camps. Now, there's a lot of discussion about how much um, how much was basically um, how many were killed, what was the result of that? Was it disease or was it actually the concentration camp? They killed them purposefully. This example right here shows a large pile of bones and skulls. Um, I did some research on this particular photo and I could find that it did come from Havana, Cuba, and it seemed to be associated with those concentration camps. But there wasn't a whole lot of other information to that. Um, and some of that, the reason why historians don't have as much is because there was so much written in the yellow press, it's hard to know what was actually true and what was actually embellished. The whole idea behind this was that we felt like the Cuban rebels were being taken advantage of, um, and there was not freedom. Since this was in our back door, Cuba is only 90 miles off the coast of Florida. Um, that really caused a lot of American people to feel like we needed to do something. So the Yellow Press, primarily two people, Pulitzer and Hearst, were both big newspaper gurus that ran large papers, and they kind of got into like this competition. Part of the competition was basically who could write the worst story um, to make Spain look bad and make us look like the big, brother that was going to save them. Um, so people became enraged with Spain and felt like they were treating Cuba bad. This also encouraged us to have more what we would call a jingoism, which is aggressive nationalism. So, nationalism is basically the pride and commitment to one's country. Aggressive nationalism, we look at not only the pride and commitment to your own country, but also that commitment to either expand your country or make your country better through an aggressive tactic such as battles, taking over, more like a policeman is kind of the comparison I would make at this time. So, President William McKinley had, because of some of the issues the Yellow Press had written about, and there were some letters sent back and forth, he had sent the USS Maine to the harbor there in Havana. Um, and it didn't take long, but they were in the harbor and it exploded. Now, 266 sailors died. There was actually about 350 on the ship at the time, and a lot of the response at this time period was like, remember the Maine, kind of like remember Pearl Harbor. Some of the headlines were like, war, sure, we're going to go to war. You know, a lot of catching headlines at this time period. Now, um, McKinley did not act extremely fast. He actually went and asked for an investigation of the explosion. Um, it was a very quick investigation, and took just a few days, and it declared that a mine had destroyed the USS Maine. Well, considering that that was a part of Spain's area and that they probably were the one that had originally set the mine, it basically led McKinley to ask for a declaration of war. So actually, some of the first battles of the Spanish-American War, um, we actually have our first battles in the Philippines. So George Dewey was a Commodore, what we would call an admiral today, and he actually it was this would have been so the Maine exploded in February, so about May. Um, we would have sailed from Hong Kong, where we had bases, and sailed into Manila Bay in the Philippines. And basically, they were taken by surprise. The Spanish forces in the Philippines were not at all ready for a U.S. attack or for the amount of firepower that we showed up with. Um, so, as the rebels in the Philippine rebels were fighting against the Spanish forces, we were attacking with our navy in the bay. It was a very short naval battle. Um, I believe in that battle we didn't have any no American soldiers lost their lives. There were Spanish sailors that lost their lives, but no Americans. At the same time, around the same time, we have the U.S. Navy capturing Guantanamo Bay, and then we have the base there established. So we have um, the cavalry and the Rough Riders go and actually capture Santiago, which I think I have a map of that here. But here's a picture of the Rough Riders, or part of the Rough Riders, and um, no, I don't have a map of that. After this time period, where we have the naval battle, um, basically the fight on the mainland of Spain was just a few months. If I remember right, I think it was 3. But when we have the capture of Guantanamo Bay, the cavalry and Rough Riders go into Cuba, it definitely has an impact on that. Now, the Spaniards weren't defeated. We actually went to a naval battle where Spain surrendered. The naval battle happened. It's called, if I remember right, that was the battle in the Bay of Santiago, and basically the Spanish fleet tried to escape, and they were blocked by our ships, which eventually destroyed them. Now, in the Spanish-American War, we only have 3,000 dying, but only 385 died in combat. Most of the other ones actually died from what the examples here are showing you, malaria and yellow fever. Both of those were um, passed from one to another by mosquitoes, was the carrier for those. Here's example showing the sickness and diseases. We can obviously see a whole lot more died from sickness and disease than from deaths in battle. Now, in the end, we have the Treaty of Paris. Now, we've gone to the Treaty of Paris we've gone to Paris many times to create treaties, but at this time period, we go back to Paris and we basically say, we're going to give up control of, that Spain is going to give up control of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. Now, once we have control, one of the issues was what to do with the Philippines. Now, the Philippines themselves had fought for their own freedom, but as William McKinley said, it wouldn't be honorable to give it back to them. We won it. You can't win something in a fight and then give it back to the natives. That just didn't seem um, very American. So the debate for what to do with the Philippines was quite extensive. During the Platt Amendment, basically we turned some of the control back over to the Cuban government. Also, we established Guantanamo Bay, which is still there today. Guantanamo Bay is still controlled by the U.S. From that Platt Amendment. And some of the pros of the Treaty of Paris, we acquired the Philippines. Definitely was in our favor. We did win the war, so it was written in our favor more than Spain. Guam and Puerto Rico become a part of our territory and still remain there today. But the more important part, I think, overall, was the fact that we become a big player. We become a part of the big dogs as far as imperialism. We do have some of the cons that we still fought in the Philippines. We actually lost more troops in the Philippines than in the Spanish-American War. What to do with the Philippines were actually some of the issues with that. And overall, some of the issues that happened from this was our influence in the Pacific region threatened China and Japan, which actually influences us in World War II in later eras. As this actually shows here, you can see that Uncle Sam basically is enjoying his new acquired territories. Is the purpose of this political cartoon. Now, Emilio Aguinaldo rebelled against American expansionism. He was actually on our side in the Spanish-American War, but when he realized that we were going to control it and set up our own government, he said this is no different than Spain. So therefore, he basically led his troops against American forces. They enacted a lot of guerrilla warfare, which meant that we basically fought there for almost 4 years in the Philippines, trying to establish control. At this time period, we actually took civilians, put them in concentration camps. Heard of that before, only from Spain. Um, in this time period, we actually have 5,000 Americans die. We actually have 5,000 Americans die and 200,000 Filipinos in this war. One of the interesting things here is I did some research on this photo primarily. This is called a garrote or garrote. It basically is a screw type mechanism that's kind of like a guillotine. I know it was used by the Spanish, but I couldn't find reliable sources that it was used by Americans. If it was only used for maybe 6 months before the Americans had outlawed it to take care of rebels that had rebelled. Some of the things that you can see that were rising in our expansionism, our production, the reasons for that, our manufacturing, that we become a very big player in this. Now, overall, we have our influence over the Philippines. We set it up like a territory, and the first governor that was over that was actually Taft, and he actually helped build the Philippines back. He established roads, healthcare, things like that. He also gave them some of their own self-rule back, which was very encouraging for the Filipinos. Finally, Congress, I don't know if I have a date right here, but I guess it was 1916, we finally passed the Jones Act. The Jones Act promised that eventually we would turn over independence back to the Filipinos and it would be their own country. Kind of one of those things about American history that it's a little negative in that way because we fought and took over these areas that we had originally freed, but then 15 years later we basically gave them their independence. I kind of feel bad for the people that lost all their lives in that fight. So that's notes 11.6.